everyone. I'm Sally Glick. This is Sobelco. We are just about to embark on our quarterly nonprofit webinar. I'm delighted to welcome you here and have you be a part of this great program. When we put this program together, we decided to select two very seasoned professional executive directors, CEOs of nonprofits in our state to help us discuss the role of organization leaders during a pandemic. How could you avoid that conversation and beyond? I'd like to take a moment to just tell you a little bit about the two people who are here today with us. Jim Kirkos is the Chief Executive Officer of Meadowlands Regional Chamber. He has been in that role since June 2002, and he is the person in charge of making sure that their mission to accelerate economic, community, and business development by providing its membership with relationship building opportunities, destination marketing services, business education, and legislative affairs advocacy to businesses of all sizes across all industry sectors throughout the greater Meadowlands region. It's quite a mission, and he does an amazing job of making that happen. Peg Wright has served as the president and CEO of the Center for Great Expectations since 1998, when she founded the center to assist homeless pregnant women and adolescents in breaking the cycle of homelessness, abuse, and addiction. The program began in a donated house in Somerville, serving just 12 women per year. Under her leadership, CGE now provides an uncompromised continuum of care across prevention and treatment of substance abuse and mental health disorders for individuals who have experienced trauma. Now, what's really interesting about these two people is not what I've just said. It's actually what I didn't just say. When we put this topic together, we said the very first question we wanted to ask was, what are some of the key traits and characteristics of great leaders? And we wanted to ask that of these two people because they are truly great leaders. Both of them pointedly don't have that in their bios, because truly great leaders are humble, they get the job done, they work as a team, and they give credit where it's due. So while we are going to call these two people great leaders, successful at achieving their missions, they're going to share an hour with us today. Q&A is open, so feel free to pose questions. We will talk about great leaders, successful leaders before a pandemic, during a pandemic, and what that even looks like after the pandemic. So Jim, I think we're going to go in alphabetical order, lucky you. And we're going to start talking about those key traits, the characteristics that leaders share in common when there isn't particularly a crisis to respond to. What does that leader look like? And Peg, then we'll turn to you.
Well, sure. First of all, thank you, Sally. I appreciate your kind comments. It's a pleasure to be here with Peg and always with you and your team. So I think if I get right to it and think about the kinds of skills and characteristics that were needed to work through the pandemic, it was most undoubtedly a steady hand and the ability to think quickly and not be afraid to pivot. And I know we're probably all tired of that word, but the fact of the matter is, we all had to do that in some way, shape, or form. And so, listening to our members and for in my particular case, and dealing with so many small business members that just didn't know where to turn. It was fairly obvious quickly that we needed to be that strong, steady hand that was going to provide communications and guidance and point them in the right direction. At the same time, letting them know that we're going through the same situation and that we're all kind of in this together. No one is alone. And to be able to do that, that's how we started our process off. And we developed a certain level of factor where our members relied on us to provide them that credible information that enabled them to at least think about what was next for them and how they would pivot.
Thank you. And I want to come back to how you did that in just a minute. But Peg, you as well have had a tremendous amount of responsibility, began your own organization, clearly exemplify solid leadership. What are some of those traits you see in yourself as well as in others, your peers, who are good leaders and who are achieving great results?
Thank you, Sally. Great to see you, and thank you for inviting me to share my experience. I was thinking about this, and all I can say is thank God that this pandemic happened at this point in my career and not 25 years ago. My initial history was, as you know, I was in the diagnostic imaging business, running around with playing hard and working hard. And frankly, I thought I was all that in a bag of chips and didn't really think a lot about others because frankly, at that point in time, I was partying. And so my growth and change over time, which I think is so critical for leaders to recognize that A, that needs to happen, and B, we're here for others, has been really, a process for me. And it's gone over the last 20 plus years that I've been doing this work. And, thank God that happened because, I think that's really the key, that, I am here to help the people that are on my team, and my team is here to help the community. So, if we can keep that mindset, and really recognize that, I don't have all the answers. I never have had. I used to think I did, but now I'm very clear that I don't. And what a gift that is to recognize that I need help. I need to talk to my people. I need to talk to the community and really listen to what the needs are. And frankly, when this thing launched, we were shut down by the state, but we weren't, because my residential centers remained open. And, we had to support the frontline staff that were coming in every day. And it was, pivot was the word, Jim. That was absolutely it. It was pretty crazy. So,
obviously, both of you have learned and grown through the years and into your roles, and increasingly getting better at what you do. And when you talk about those traits and characteristics, Jim, you mentioned trust, and Peg mentioned not knowing everything, which again goes to being certainly very humble. And Jim, I've heard you use the word vulnerable. So before we get into actually how you did what you did, could you talk a little bit about those particular traits, the way you've built trust and the way you've shown and demonstrated your own, I guess humble, I don't want to keep using that word, but that ability to have other people understand that you are vulnerable, that you don't have all the answers, and that's okay. How you've built that trust. And we'll take that back to you.
I guess, Sally, part of it is we're all of us in the nonprofit world, regardless of what type of entity we're running, we're all servant leaders. And there's a certain, and if we're in the job for more than a couple of years, there's a certain characteristic that comes here. I suspect that we're all humble in our own way. In my particular case, I did use the word vulnerable with you, Sally, when we talked prior to doing the webinar. I felt like it was really important that I shared with my members, and we were doing weekly business owner roundtables so that people can voice their concerns. We could disseminate information, and I would openly share where I was concerned about even the chamber business, but I always had a plan of what my steps were going to be. So I shared with them that I was vulnerable and I was concerned and I was human, while I also presented to them that I had a plan, and that plan may have been a little bit of experimentation as we were pivoting, but I had a plan. And the real message to my members was, if you think we're just snapping back to normal, you should think again. That's not happening. We need to think about what's next. You need to really take a close look at your business. You need to analyze it and think about what you'll do to have business continuity and survive your business so that you can help it grow and sustain. And I think that regular conversation where I was expressed my own personal vulnerability, even in what I was doing, helped people understand that the other information I was providing was trustworthy, it was credible, and that we would be a source of good information. And every week we did our video call like this, the numbers grew. And it grew when people came back, and you can see the hunger for the camaraderie because we were all in this together. And that was and being a really good listener, is really important. You got to listen. You got to help understand. And Peg, you shared something. In the early days, I thought I had all the answers too, right? That comes from just being an entrepreneur, and you can conquer everything. Well, it takes a hard work. It takes a lot of deep thought to figure out how to conquer things like this pandemic. And you never do it alone. You always do it with people, whether it's board members or even just general members. So being a great listener, but being strong and steady, even while you're expressing that vulnerability, served us well.
Thank you so much for that. And Peg, how about you? So you talk about how do you instill that confidence, and you have a different audience. Jim has members and a community across all industries. You have a constituency that you serve, plus your internal community of your own staff. So maybe a little bit about each.
Well, I would say, Sally, probably 10 or 12 years ago, we really started to hone our model of care, which is a trauma-informed model of care. And, to be trauma-informed, it's a buzzword now, but for us, it's really who we are and how we function. And that includes, part of the components of that are what is called the nurtured heart approach. And so we really concentrate and focus on the positive aspects of an individual, and we really don't give any energy to negativity or the negative aspects. And we're very effusive about those positive things. So we do that throughout our culture. We do it with our staff, with each other, with the clients that we serve, and with the community at large. And, when you create that kind of culture, as Jim has mentioned, it does create a sense of trust. I mean, people can, communicate openly and share their honest and true feelings. And that's so critical. I mean, we have multiple opportunities for staff to do that. We have a peer group that meets with our HR department on a bi-weekly basis. We have town halls where all of our staff can come together and really talk about what's important to them. And in this particular, a lot of it's been on Zoom. But in this particular environment, we have clinicians that are attempting to assist clients with children pulling on their skirts, and working a telehealth session at the same time. So, it's definitely a matter of listening, hearing, collaborating, talking about what other people that are doing within the agency and how that works, et cetera. So, I think culturally we were made for this kind of a situation, quite frankly. Not saying that it's easy. It's been very difficult, but.
Yeah, I don't think anyone can use the word easy. We may overuse the word pivot or challenge, but we're never going to overuse the word easy on this. But I'm really excited that you both have focused on the word positive as well. So it's one thing to say, I am not certain of what's coming, but I have a plan. Then if you just say, I'm not certain of what's coming, and leave people hanging there frightened and nervous and uncertain and stressed that nobody knows what to do next, whereas you're presenting in a positive way a plan. Jim, we talked about your members, and I said you have the way that you inspire and motivate is focused on members, but it was also focused on your staff, to Peg's point, right? You have a robust staff as well. So how did you work to get those people feeling comfortable with what was going on beyond just your members?
Well, that's a great point, Sally. I needed to huddle with my team first to make sure that they felt the confidence that I would be talking about to our members on these calls, because they needed. I certainly could not carry this on my own shoulders. They needed to be a part of it, and our members needed to see that that our team was united in all the areas that we were about to tackle. And so I needed to make them understand that when they're having conversations with our members, that their body language expressed that confidence, right? The body language is really important. When you get on the call, if you want to be positive, you need to feel positive. You need to look positive. And people can read through it today, right? You can see it in people's eyes. And I, for one, wear my emotions right on my sleeve. If I'm not happy, you see it right in my eyes. Or if I'm concerned, you see it right in my eyes. So you have to believe in it. So we huddled with our team. We talked about all the things we were doing. I had to make some hard decisions just about the size of my own staff and the roles of everybody early on for the sake of everyone. Made those hard decisions, and then proceeded to continue to sustain the organization. Once the rest of the team bought into that, I was then able to divert my attention to my constituency, which was the members, the business members, and that was really critical. So getting my team on board so that we were truly a team was job number one.
And I think that's probably where everyone starts. And that's why good communication is so critical. We talk a lot. That's kind of like an oxymoron, right? We talk about communication. That is, well, communication is talking. But to your point, it's much more than talking. It is attitude. It is body language. It is an air of confidence that makes other people. Confidence breeds confidence, and positivity breeds positivity. And so when you can get your team to buy in, then everyone else does follow suit, and that would be really important. Communication is probably one of the key traits that all leaders share, and if they don't, they surely have a hard time motivating or inspiring anybody. So you both had strategies for growth. One organization started in 1998. You came along to the Meadowlands in 2002. You've been entrenched for a long time, and just every day come in and say, oh, I think I look at my task list. Oh, this would be a good day to do this. This would be a good day to build a building. This would be a good day to offer new services and expand our resources, right? You had a strategy. And then all of a sudden, it's 2020, and it's March, and everybody's slammed by a pandemic that wasn't a part of your strategy at all. You joked about pivoting. I keep saying we should tell the thesaurus or the dictionaries to get that out of there. No one ever wants to see that word again. But nonetheless, everybody had to do something quickly. And that was the other thing. It wasn't just pivot. It was fast, because if you didn't, your constituents, your members, everything about your whole organization was going to struggle and suffer and possibly not recover as well as you'd like it to. So Jim, what did you have to do differently? I mean, I know you've said town halls and you had weekly meetings, but you had to yourself say, I need to change my strategy. I was going along here. Now I've got to turn around and do something that we've never done before. I think it's really hard to imagine coming up with a new process or solution that's never been tried. It's really easier to stick with what you've done and keep doing that when it's successful. So you said something really, really that stuck with me: comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah,
tell us a little about that.
Yeah, so I had a great conversation one day with Steve Adebato, and he asked me about what was next for leaders like myself that run organizations. And I said, one of the things that the pandemic has taught me is to be comfortable being uncomfortable, because that has actually made me sharper. I feel like I am a better business person and a better leader of our organization because I went through a 6 or 8 month period really uncomfortable and uncertain, and I needed to be at the top of my game. And so, but I want to revert to something I said earlier about planning. I've always operated the chamber with a 3 to 5 year strategic business plan, and I've got goals for within that strategic business plan. And if I didn't have that plan, I wouldn't have been able to pivot quickly on the areas that I needed to change. So in our particular case, when we couldn't do events, and I was growing our event business to be one of our big revenue generators to run our organization. And if that revenue wasn't going to be there because I couldn't do events, well, how would we run the organization? And so because I had a plan, I was able to go back and quickly identify the other areas where we could grow revenue and sustain revenue as we were reducing operating expenses in order for us to do that. So the planning is absolutely critical. And I think I learned that early on in business, because I was in business before I took over the chamber. And that was something that sticks with me today. Every leader of every not-for-profit, and I say this all the time to members in the nonprofit world, we're all businesses. We're all small and large businesses, right? Peg's budget in her organization is a significant budget, right? Much larger than mine. but we're all businesses. We have to be sharp business people, not just not-for-profit leaders. Not-for-profit to me is a tax status, and it has nothing to do with how we run our organization.
You heard that from Sobelco, where we say nonprofit is your tax status, not your business plan.
That's
And I'm
possible.
glad you repeated that. Do you mind if I'm asking, since you did have one source of revenue that you'd been counting on, strategically planning for, and isn't it funny that we thought we had the luxury of planning 3 to 5 years in advance, not knowing now where we'll be in 3 months? We can't even decide if we should have a gala in October, November, December, and we're already in August. What else replaced that revenue? How did you had a plan, but what did you have to do to make that happen?
Well, so obviously we went to platforms like what we're on today, and to manage those particular things. But there was also communications. I had to go to my members that were our bigger supporters and larger investors in our membership platform, and say to them, well, listen, we may not do an awards gala to which you get a sponsorship at, and we may not be able to do these things. Will you allow me to shift that program around? And for us, it reverts back to relationships. I've always believed in building those relationships. So because you had those relationships, our members stuck with us and said, Jimmy, do whatever we need to do. And so we pivoted. So I gave sponsorships at virtual events. We provided new types of digital communications. We provided all types of other ways to get those visibility options to those sponsors. And many of them were like, Jimmy, I like this better. And so they kept their investment in the organization. At the end of the year, I projected to lose 35 to 40% of our event revenue, and we lost 8%. Right? And
I call that a win.
I call that a win. And again, so that it's communication, Sally. It's relationships with your donors and your investors. It's strengthening your team, and just having a plan and having the confidence of all of those things lets you think clearly about how to make some changes. If you're thinking under duress and stress because you don't have a plan, then it's gonna be like a death spiral.
Right. And Peg, the same goes for you. Obviously, you depended on fundraising. You have a constituency that you get some grants, but you also depend on corporate and individual giving. And again, I think most organizations are very proud of their 3 to 5 year strategic plan, when they thought they had 3 to 5 years to accomplish one. So what did you have to do that was so very different beyond the communication, beyond the huddling with your teams and making sure that you got everything accomplished? How did you change your day-to-day and bigger picture activities?
Well, I couldn't agree more with Jim as it relates to, being very clear about the fact that we're a business. We're in the business of helping people, but we're clearly a business. And, our plan incorporated what we call the Institute. And so we took all of the information and all of the models of care that we've been developing over all these years and created a way to disseminate that information in schools and to other organizations. And so when the pandemic hit, that was a big problem. The Institute came to a screeching halt as it relates to being in schools. We had one pilot going at Hunterdon Central High School. So what we decided to do, since the communities at large were so stressed, why not offer webinars to the community with the topics that we were going to be selling, if you will, previously. And that's what we did. We launched a series of webinars to the community. And I think as a result of that, we've gained some traction in attracting people that may actually hire us, down the road, which is fantastic. The strategy behind the Institute is really to crawl out from under state and federal dependence. We need a funding stream, a revenue stream that is not dependent on, who's ever at the reins at any given time, politically. The other thing that we did, recently was I hired a lobbying group in DC because we clearly need boots on the ground in Washington. And there's a lot of money flowing and it's like a fire hose. So we want to be at the receiving end of that fire hose somehow. and we have a lot to offer, and people need to know about it. So those are a couple of the things that we've been doing.
Great, thank you. You know, what's interesting to us all listening to the conversation is how for a very long period of time, probably I guess since the 1918 pandemic, we've had over 100 years to get comfortable doing things the way we've always done them. Jim commented on being uncomfortable, being comfortable to be uncomfortable. But the idea of being dependent on events and other fundraisers, right? A business, which you are, has to have revenue generated, and you're used to a golf outing. And maybe you pivot and say, this year we're not doing a golf outing, this year we're doing a bowl-a-thon. Or maybe you make a big decision and go from a black tie gala and a silent auction to a casual barbecue instead. But the bottom line is the framework stays the same. The idea of generating revenue by having events and people support you and support those events sticks with you. But what you've both mentioned is the whole framework changed. And we couldn't say you support our events. What you needed to say and what you did say was you support us.
Right.
And if we're not going to have that award event, you are still supporting us. And your results, Jim and Peg, both of you, were clear that that's what people agreed to. So now you've had that strategic redirection. You recognize the framework needed to be completely changed. This wasn't a tweak or two or go from 25 board members to 10 board members or anything so insignificant, but truly a major change. And now we're facing more change. Just when we thought this was sort of trickling off, we're discovering a variant, and that perhaps we thought we could get back out in person, maybe not so quickly get back out in person. And again, being ready for the next step. So if everyone got comfortable, Jimmy, you said some of your donors said, hey, I kind of like this. This is great, right? I'm writing you a check and I don't have to leave the couch. So now, how are you going to prepare yourself, your staff, your teams, and your constituents for the next step without even possibly knowing what that is? So Jim, what do you have in your next plan? What's your exciting next step?
So allow me just to go back and share something that I didn't share in my
Oh,
last
please
comment.
do.
And that was that one of the ways that we built strength in our community was we made it clear, we're a membership organization where our members pay membership dues to be part of the organization. And so we made it clear from the very beginning that we were not going to terminate any member for failure to pay their dues. We would carry anybody and everybody as long as they communicated with us and say, hey, I can't pay my dues. We would say, okay, if you can't pay, can you pay something? No, you can't pay anything. No problem. Stick with us. Pay us next year when things come back. That policy united the entire organization, right? It united the organization. It became then a purpose for those companies, those industries that were not as negatively affected by the pandemic to step up and do a little more. And many did. In fact, I put out a note to those members. I said, if you can afford to pay your dues, pay them early. And if you can afford to pay a little extra, please do so, and we'll put it towards those that can't pay. And I was shocked and amazed at how many people just did that. And so by, again, openly communicating that and having everybody feel like a community, it gave us the strength of being that we're all in this together. We'll figure it out as we're going along together, and we'll pivot. And so now, as we thought we were going to come out of it, and you just said it, I'm trying to plan whether I should do an event at the end of October like we always do. And I didn't do one because I was anticipating this. All right. I'm like, I'm not going to pull the trigger on doing a gala in October because I'm not so sure we're going to be able to do a gala in October. And sure enough, so I set my operating model in a way that I don't need to do the gala to pay my rent this year, and we'll do it again. So we're gonna follow the guidelines. Our members are with us. They're participating virtually. We are doing some in-person events, and because we've built the trust in the amount of information that we've provided to them and the hand-holding on all the stimulus applications and things like that, I feel like our members are with us, Sally. And so however we pivot over what's next and what's new, to be honest with you, People are tired of these virtual events in many ways. There's certainly this whole Zoom fatigue piece that's out there. So I don't know that I want to do a virtual gala. So I'm probably not going to do that. And we'll let some of the charity not-for-profits do them, and not cannibalize those events so that they can generate the philanthropy that they need to, and so forth. So I don't have any big idea for this year, but I got a couple of big ideas brewing for 2022.
You're going to give us a sneak peek, or maybe not, huh?
Well, so we thought about, because we were so event driven, we feel like instead of doing more events, we want to do less events. So we want to do bigger events, very different events, and there's a different mindset out there. I think we could all agree that we were typically a Monday through Friday business centric event business. But you know what? Last week we did a networking event where we took people on a walk of DeCourt State Park, the environmental center, and they loved it. We had almost 50 people take that walk. And so they wanted to do things that were fun and be together and feel like they were a community while they were networking and doing business with one another. So we're gonna shift a little bit. We're gonna do events that are fun, that people can enjoy each other's company and build relationships, perhaps in a fun way and not only in a business way.
It's a fantastic idea, right? And it also
Love it.
creates relationships among the people participating. They're used to seeing each other in a business setting, um, under certain circumstance, between 9 and 5, whatever it might be. And now to be out on a hike together,
Yep.
you present a whole different side of each other. You get to know each other in a much more meaningful way, perhaps.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, finish.
I just say I like the way you use the word together, because when you say we're going to do this together, there's a lot of unspoken words in there, and most of that is about being a partner. And when you have, as you described, loyal partners, when you told people if you could pay early or pay extra, you will apply it to those people who can't. The members who did that felt a responsibility to each other as well as to the organization, and stepped up. And I think that's absolutely remarkable. I think it says something about the generous spirit of the people of, at least certainly the Meadowlands, and I'd like to say the human race, is that when needed, they open their hearts, their doors, their wallets, and say, well, what can we do if we're lucky enough to be in the position to help you? And I think taking ownership, we gave people ownership of the problem, and they also became the solution to the problem. Huge.
Yeah.
So Peg, you gonna have a hike?
Well, from your lips to God's ears, Jim, we are going to do our gala October 1st. So, and I rely so much on our board of trustees for their guidance and their help and their support, and, other folks in the community that are mentors of mine. And we literally just decided we're going to go for it. I mean, last year we did a virtual event, and, to your point, it's just not the same. So, we have decided to pull the trigger, but it's, I think I would also agree that events they're very time consuming. They take a lot of staff time. And, what I've learned over the years is that, when you look at philanthropy, the biggest chunk for me needs to be individual major gift donors. It really does. And so right in the middle of this pandemic, we decided that we were going to launch an endowment campaign. And so we've done that, and it's really going quite well. And I'm going to blow it up because it's, we have so much work to do. And it's just so difficult to rely on all of these unknowns that we've been dealing with over the last 18 months. And I think we've decided collectively that it really makes a lot of sense to really focus on our major gift donors and individuals. So in the form of an endowment, I mean, we've been around long enough that I think it's people expect that to happen. And so we've moved ahead. So stay tuned.
So no hype, but something exciting anyway. I think that one of the things you've both expressed is that you cannot afford to let anything stop you. If you say, well, we can't do this now, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We can't start an endowment fund. We can't try new events. We can't generate new revenue. This isn't a good time to do that. When you're waiting and waiting for the right moment to start anything new and dynamic, you probably never get there at all. So this kind of allowed everybody, for better or worse, to press the pause button and say, what else could we be doing? What else should we be doing? And how could we do things a little differently? Even if you hadn't had a pandemic, maybe at some point those galas or other events, or just having an organization that focuses on a business calendar on Monday to Friday, this is a huge advantage now. You would have probably never gone down that path, even with a 5-year strategic plan. I'm guessing one of the points was not, let's expand to a full calendar and maybe have some Sunday morning brunches with our colleagues, right? I'm guessing that wasn't an original part of your plan. So how differently is that plan now? And when you think of what you were going to do for the next 3 to 5 years, tell us a little bit about all the things that changed.
So it's really interesting you brought that up, Sally, because about 4 years ago we had a gentleman named Mick Fleming, who is the president and CEO of the National Chamber Association down in Washington, come up and be my keynote speaker at my annual meeting. And they had done a future study 5 or 6 years ago, and he reported on the future study. And one of the things the future study had said, well before this pandemic, was that chambers of commerce of the future needed to reinvent themselves because new entrepreneurs that were coming into the business, will look at being a part of a chamber of commerce as their father's or mother's chamber of commerce, and not necessarily what they want, right? They network, the technology is different, so you have to recreate the kind of perception that your organization is. He also said that chambers of commerce are very likely to be a 7-day-a-week business in the future. So the simple fact is, while we've been doing things Monday through Friday, the future for us in terms of some of the events we do, large or small, may in fact be a Saturday or a Sunday. It may be things, because let's face it, people's mindset has changed as to what's important to them. And they don't want to go to a cocktail reception on a Thursday because they want to be with their kids at their soccer and baseball game. And so that importance has risen so much more during the pandemic. So now if they're going to come out, maybe we need to do family-oriented events that's going to allow the business owner or the executive to come to the events with their family, still get to network with some folks, but still have some family time. And
maybe even find more in common with each other. Oh, I didn't know your daughter plays soccer. Oh, I didn't know your son was on the debate team. And suddenly you formed a new relationship that could be very profitable going forward, or at least interesting, if nothing else.
On that walk, Sally, people, like, I showed up in my safari hat and I had hiking shoes, and people don't get a chance to see me that way, right? They see me like this all
Right.
the time, or in a shirt and tie. And so they related to me like I was just regular. I'm a regular guy. I like all these things. I like to walk. I like to ride my bike, and I enjoy this environment, the environment. So we connected in a way, and people were really excited by they did business. People met each other in a way that we've never done that before. So I think that's where we're headed.
And it sounds so fun. I mean, when I think about it, we've talked amongst ourselves, even in our own firm, at other professions beyond the nonprofit community, saying reinvent yourself. And technology has been a big underpinning of that. It has enabled us to talk about reinventing ourselves. And one of the conversations for those futurists in the CPA world is they talk a lot about artificial intelligence and how is that going to play a role. And so we're constantly thinking about reinventing, changing, morphing, moving into new places we've never been before and stretching. But this pushed everything to the front burner in a way that, we'll get there someday. And the reality was you're getting there right now. And the changes that you're describing are just huge. Before we go to you, Peg, I also want to remind everyone, it isn't often that you have the opportunity to have two really seasoned and successful leaders sitting here who have been through in the trenches and have been through drastic change. And so please feel free to ask some questions. We don't have any, and I know we have tons of people on this call. So If anyone has a question, feel free to ask it. And Peg, you want to talk a little bit about the reinventing. You had a personal hands-on service. You have people you are with interacting with, your staff interacts with your constituents. You had to reinvent that.
Well, we did. I mean, telehealth played, a huge role in the work that we're doing, which I think by all accounts will stick around. We found that it's really been a very important tool, especially with indigent populations that we serve that have trouble with childcare, they have trouble with transportation. So that really eliminates all of those barriers. But just in thinking strategically, I would be remiss in not suggesting that, at this time, I mean, in 2019, I guess, we experienced maybe 70,000 deaths from overdose. We're past 90,000 in 2020. And I think the pandemic and its impact on mental health and substance use is going to be profound. So we are really teeing up to be able to try to respond to that, in a way that is community based. And I remember not that long ago, David Brooks from the Aspen Institute wrote an article about, and it was called The Weavers, and I loved it. And he talked about how the community can come together to assist people that are experiencing crises in their life and trauma. And, that's what we do. And so, we're working with Rutgers University and others to create a community network of individuals and providers like ourselves that can respond to people, and there's a myriad of issues at hand, including homelessness, so as well as substance use and trauma. So we're looking to the community to open the community up to assist us in doing that. And, like you, Sally, I have some great mentors, like the likes of yourself, for example, you're one of them.
And I'm proud to be so.
Amy Mansue and Monica Smith of Market Smith, we're all talking about how can we create a community of people that can really support one another. And I'm excited about that. And I think this pandemic has really shed light on how critical that is and how critical it is that we be together.
You raised such an interesting point. I was going to go to closing, but I want to say something because of what you just said. Every year there's a happiness study and they tell you the happiest countries on earth, right? And often, at least I think 3 of the last 4 years, it's been Finland is the happiest country on earth. And I happen to just be lucky enough to have a friend who's from Finland, who's currently living in Summit, New Jersey. Go figure, right? You were in the happiest place on earth and you moved to Summit, New Jersey. And I said to her, Emma, what makes Finland a country that gets rated like that the people are so significantly different and happier than everyone else? And she said, it's not that tra-la-la-la-la, we're happy kind of happy. It's a sense of security and safety because you're part of a social network. You have people around you who care about you. You don't feel isolated. You don't feel alone. You feel connected. And that's exactly what you're saying. And so whether they're little pockets that you create your happiness in a group and by connecting them like that, Jim reaching out to members who can afford to help members who can't, think of how good you feel when you go home at night, put your head on the pillow, and you picked up somebody else's burden, just a little bit alleviated some of the stress for them. How good does that feel for the person doing the giving, not just the person who receives the gift, right? So that sense of happiness comes of how we have from having each other. And that's what you both do so very well. So being that we didn't get any questions, I would love to have you just make each of you some final observation of what you think. If you had the Rutgers Graduate School of Business sitting in front of you and you were allowed about 2-3 minutes to tell them something profound and significant, what would you tell them? Jim, what would you do?
Well, I think as I think about what it's taken to run the chamber business, and some of this may be obvious, and so pardon me, but I've been a lot more keen to the finances and really understanding. I created, along with my accounting manager, a whole set of dashboard kinds of financial reports that I had never done before. In all the years I was here, we created new cash flow documents. I wanted to understand what the trend was of how people have paid their dues. What was our collections versus what was billed out? We had never really looked at those kinds of things, but I needed to understand what happened in 17, 18, 19, 20, and what's going to happen in the future, so that I could at least try to do some financial forecasting. That financial forecasting is giving me the confidence of saying I don't have to do this event this year, and I'm still going to be able to pay my rent. And my relationships with my members that have invested are going to allow me to do that. So it enabled me to make better decisions, more keen decisions about the future. So I think as being an entrepreneur and a business person, I feel like I'm a better business person now because I was forced to think differently, even about how I'm running the chamber business, how we've looked at everything from health benefits, all the costs of running our business. We brought down our operating expenses significantly, which enabled us to not have to be so reliant on some of the other revenue sources that we did. And then we'll figure out how to grow revenue in the other buckets when we get to 2022.
Knowledge is powerful.
Knowledge is
Data
power.
and metrics really give you that opportunity to make the right educated decisions. Peg, how about you? What would you tell that class?
Well, I think, most importantly, we're always looking at the bottom line, obviously, and we had a choice to make with regard to some systems that we had internally. Should we relook at our electronic health record? Should we relook at our accounting software? And it was right as the pandemic was really heating up, and we made a decision to go ahead because it clearly would streamline, all of the work that we were doing. And so we pulled the trigger on that. And I think it's worked out quite well. We have a much clearer picture of everything, of productivity, of, bottom line. It's been a very positive decision. And the only other thing I would say is to an MBA graduate class, be kind to one another. Look out for your neighbor. Just ask them what's happening. If you notice that they're not feeling well at any given time, offer a hand. I think we all need to do more of that. I think, people are suffering all over the place. And I think to be that person that cares, I think is a really important thing to be able to do.
Hey, Sally, I want to add something, if I may.
Absolutely.
One of the people that I listen to a lot, and many on the call may also, is a gentleman named Simon Sinek.
Yes.
And so I'm a real fan and believer in his most recent book, which is called The Infinite Game and the Infinite Mindset. Right. And I can relate to that very much so. And one of the reasons that I took to it so well is because the chamber and our mission wins if we continue to exist. Right. That's the win. Right. The chamber can never go away. We do too much good work in the community, both from an economic development standpoint and for the quality of life in the region, that the chamber must exist infinitely. And so it's a mindset that says everything that we're planning for is not only for now, so you can do, but it's for the future. It's an infinite game. And I would offer anybody that's on the call that has not listened to Simon Sinek TED Talk, please go to YouTube and Google Simon Sinek, The Infinite Game, and listen to a few of his talks. They're very, very motivating, and there's a lot of lessons there. And to exactly what Peg just said, everything about what that gentleman talks about is helping one another and changing the world in a way that it's not about making money. Right? It's just not only about making money. It's about helping all of us around us achieve and succeed and live better lives.
What a great way to end, right? Perfect way. And when you think that there is no silver lining in this particular cloud, we've just spent almost an hour identifying extraordinary measures and wonderful ways of getting better at being human, just because the pandemic hit and we had no choice. So I'm glad we had no choice. I'm glad the two of you were the leaders that helped us across this community. I cannot thank you enough on behalf of Sobelco, my colleague, Colleen Logan, who's our Director of Marketing and pulls all the strings and makes everything happen. And of course, we have an amazing nonprofit practice group led by Bridget Hartnett. There's a fabulous team, and Tara Delgavio, the other partner in that group. And we are so proud to be able to put these programs on and add the value. And we can't thank you enough for being a part of that. So I hope everyone has a wonderful hot afternoon. Keep cool if you can. And keep an eye on our calendar. There will be more events. And I know that I'll be seeing both of you, whether in person or not, somewhere along the line pretty soon, because we do keep in close touch, and I'm glad we're friends. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.